ChoralEd. Welcome to episode 50 of ChoralEd. Thank you so much for supporting us by watching and subscribing as we reach this new milestone of 50 episodes. As we begin our 50th episode, we're transitioning to a new series on technology for the music educator. While we'll talk about various technology resources, we'll be focusing on audio equipment. The reason for this is, as you may have experienced as a music educator currently, or as you will likely experience as a future music educator, choir directors and music technology really go hand in hand. We have show choirs, we work with a musical, even simply just setting up a microphone at the concert to speak to the audience, or for soloists. We use microphones and audio equipment all the time. And so a familiarity with this equipment is going to be very helpful for your career. If not, you're going to have to rely on somebody else to do it for you, and they may be available, they may not be available to help. Who knows? Kind of a quick, interesting, funny story. You may be familiar with state testing, where teachers have to monitor the state test for various schools. And so this was in Texas. And my knowledge of audio equipment actually got me out of state testing one time because no one else knew what they were doing. I was in the middle of testing, monitoring a test, about 2 hours in. This was only for like the freshmen and sophomores, so the juniors and seniors were watching a movie or doing something else in the auditorium, and they had an issue. No one knew how to fix it. So the assistant principal comes in and says, hey, they need your help with sound equipment, I'll cover for you. And I think, do I need to come back? They're like, no, just stay there. So my knowledge of audio equipment got me out of the state testing, monitoring the test, which in my opinion is really boring. You just sit there, you can't use your device or anything else. You just have to monitor the students taking a test. But I thought that was kind of funny that I got out of state testing because of my experience and knowledge of audio equipment. So anyways, today we're starting with the very basics, and we'll talk about two topics: the types of cables and the types of microphones. It's important to know these different types so we can become familiar with how they're used and the purposes and the needs and how we would use them in various settings. So to begin, we start with two types of cables. The first, you may know this as a microphone cable. Its official name and technical name is the XLR cable. It has two different ends. One end goes into the microphone. The other end goes into the receiver or the snake. There's different things. We'll talk about in a future episode of how all this connects together. But very common cable to use. Like the name infers, it's mostly used for microphones, but it's also used for other instruments and sometimes speakers as well, connecting to a speaker from your mixer. The other type of cable is the 1/4 inch cable. And this one has two of the same ends. And I think it's a 1/4 inch in diameter. That's where the name comes from. But that's the size of it. They're fairly large, as you see them. They're not like the aux cable, which is your headphone jack, which are very small. That's like an 1/8 inch, I believe. These are 1/4 inch in size. And these are used for microphones occasionally. You don't really run into that too often. More, this is for speakers, connecting your mixer to the speakers to power or to give sound to the speakers, as well as guitars and electric keyboards. Things like that will use 1/4 inch connections. The other connection that would go into is this 1/4 inch slot, right? And so these are in your mixer. And so you can buy adapters to expand to 1/4 inch, but usually the length of your 1/4 inch cable is how far you can go, right? So there's not much room to lengthen a cable. You're limited to this size. Now you can buy some adapters that will allow you to put two cables together. On the microphone cable, because it has two different ends, you can connect one cable to the next and to double the length of your cable or to extend the length of your cable by putting 2 or more together. I wouldn't do more than 2 cables together, but if you need more length, you can put those 2 microphone cables together. I also want to point out here the connections, the inputs that they'll go into. These are the new types of inputs that you will experience that a lot of companies are now just going to. I think it's pretty standard now. That will take both a 1/4 inch connection as well as let me get the right end here. It's all tangled up a little bit, which is not good for cables here. As well as a microphone cable, XLR cable connection. Well, that didn't go in that well. Oh, that's because it's upside down. There we go. As well as an XLR connection. So you may see these types of connectors on mixers and be like, what the heck is that for? I've never seen one of those. It takes both. Now there are some speakers that the power will look similar to that. The power connection will look similar. Here's a picture of that here. It's not this XLR 1/4 inch connection input. That is for power. It's a different type of cable. Here's that cable as well for those speakers. So you may encounter those. Now I want to talk about, I said, my cable was all tangled up. Not a good thing. When that happens, the interior lining, the actual cable itself is getting kind of twisted and knotted, and it is breaking apart. And that will damage the cable, and over time, it will stop working. It's always good to have several XLR and 1/4 inch cables available, handy, ready to go, have plenty of extras. These are often likely to break, right? Maybe 5, 10 years, especially if they're not being taken care of. They're wadded up and knotted up, and you're wrapping them around your elbow. That's going to cause deterioration to the cable itself, so just be mindful about that. There are plenty of videos about how to properly wrap a cable, so feel free to check those out. I won't take time here to discuss that, but if you want to extend the longevity of your cable, make sure you're wrapping them carefully and properly and taking care of those cables. The next topic I want to talk about here is the types of microphones. There's 3 types. They are dynamic, condenser, and ribbon microphones. Ribbon microphones are not really useful in the choral setting, so I'm not going to focus on that. They're also very breakable. If they were to fall on the ground, they're going to be broken immediately just because of the interior mechanism is very fragile. So I would avoid using ribbon microphones. Just personally, they're not really useful for a school setting. They're more for recording purposes. But the other 2 types we'll talk about, and you will encounter quite often, and that is the dynamic microphone and the condenser microphone. The dynamic microphone looks something like this. This is the Shure SM57 and SM58. It is like the industry standard for a dynamic microphone. Very common, very useful. They're about $100 each. They are worth the money. I'd say I'm not a salesperson for Shure products or anything, but they are very reliable, very useful in many different situations and circumstances. They place them on drums, they place them in front of amps, they use them for singing, right? Handheld microphones. They are good for close proximity to the sound source. So a microphone right here, I'm singing into, great. If you were trying to get a group of singers, not useful. Or even 2 singers. So you're trying to have 2 singers sing into the microphone at the same time, a dynamic microphone will not work. It will work okay, it won't be that great. They need to be right next to the microphone for a dynamic microphone to really get the sound and pick them up. So again, the use for dynamic microphones is close proximity to the sound source. The other type is a condenser microphone, and they look like something like this. There's different types. There's the large diaphragm, a large capsule size, and a small diaphragm. They have different uses. There are some large diaphragm dynamic microphones, but most of them are the same size, a smaller capsule size in that sense. The large diaphragm condenser microphone is very useful for recording purposes. Let me stop here and say condenser microphones are useful for all recording purposes, but this large diaphragm, if you're doing a recording for some auditions, maybe the all-state auditions, this type of microphone will be great. Get about a foot away from the microphone, have them sing into it. You're going to get a great recording off these large diaphragm condenser microphones. The small diaphragm condenser microphones, I use a pair of these for my concert recordings, about 12 feet away from the choir. Get a good result from these. They're also very useful if you want to amplify your choir. Let's say you're singing with a track or you're in a large space, an outside space even, and you need to amplify your choir. Placing one of these in front of each set of risers, or maybe every 1.5 sets of risers, as you see here in the picture, allows you to amplify the choir very well, about 4 or 5 feet away from the center of the riser, and you'll get a whole group of singers from that. So a very useful tool there. I also use them for recording. Those small condensers are also often used over drum mics, the overhead mics that you see, like in this picture. So there's a lot of different uses for each of these microphones. I would not use condenser microphones for on-stage things, so you don't want a large diaphragm condenser microphone at a concert for a singer. That's not going to be your best use. You probably want a wireless microphone, which we'll talk about here in a second, or a dynamic microphone. The only on-stage purpose I would have for a condenser microphone is the small condensers for amplifying a full choir sound. Now, talking about wireless microphones, these I would consider and think about this in the sense of a radio signal. All right, it's not a radio signal, that's different, but think of that as you think about wireless microphones. If you want to, you're in the car and you want to listen to your favorite station, 98.7, you're going to turn the dial to 95.4. No, that doesn't make any sense. The numbers have to match up. You want your right radio station, you need to turn to 98.7. And that's what has to happen with wireless microphones. And this is a common error that people have. You have the wireless microphone itself. That is the transmitter. It is transmitting a frequency. And you have a receiver. And that receiver is receiving that frequency. Those two frequencies have to line up like a radio signal. Typically, this is going to be in a format of 6 numerical numbers. And that is going to be a three numbers, period, 3 more numbers. So it might be 468.365, whatever it is. The microphone has a number on it, and you can change that frequency number. And the receiver has a frequency number on it, and you can change that number. And so the two have to match up, and you'll have one wireless microphone for every receiver that you have. There are other ways where you can have like 4 receivers in one little compact thing. There's various features to that, but typically you're going to have one wireless microphone for every receiver that you have. So keep that in mind. The microphone, the frequency number can be changed. The receiver frequency number can be changed. So if they're not matching, you're not getting signal, and there's going to be an issue there. So keep that in mind. You also have to deal with batteries for wireless microphones and replacing batteries to make sure there is power there. The last type of microphones, which are actually in the condenser category, are your headset microphones, as you see here, which are often used for musical theater productions, as well as lapel microphones when you have a speaker. Choir individuals don't really use lapel microphones too much, but both of these are condenser type usually. And they will require a transmitter pack and a receiver, just like the wireless microphone. They work the same. The frequency can be changed on the transmitter pack and on the receiver, and the microphone for the lapel or the headset microphone will plug into the transmitter that is worn on the body somewhere and is battery powered. So there you have it. That's the intro to basic music technology. Again, we talked about cables and types of microphones, and they all have different uses. And so just be mindful about what you're trying to do to determine the best microphone and or cable to use. Sometimes you're limited. The cable, there's only one option because there's only one type of connection to use. But just be mindful about what you need those for and what they do. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope you continue to inspire the future leaders of our world through this wonderful gift we call music. Thanks.